Hey, we're back. It's been a while and I apologize. I said I'd be out for a month. I was out for a couple of months. No big deal. We just had some things we had to take care of, and we did 3 or 4 shows in the last little bit, and we've traveled a little bit on vacation. So I apologize if you were waiting anxiously for this one, and if you weren't, hopefully you'll like it. We talked about doing these guys that I showed you. I'll flip the camera here in just a minute. But I wanted you to really take these carvings, this carving project right here, and make it your own. I wanted him to be a goofy neck guy, didn't know what to do with his hands, didn't know how to dress, and so the idea was to make it just about as funky a dress as you could. So this guy's just got a new haircut. He's looking quite handsome. Belly sticking out there, but you know, polka dotted tie never goes bad with your white socks. This guy can't pick color correctly. Big old ears. He's just anticipating. He's trying to stop himself and say, "Okay, I gotta ask her how she's doing. I gotta compliment her shoes, those kind of things," because he's not really sure about dating. This fellow wears suspenders as a part of his everyday dress, and so going out without suspenders would feel funny for him. So good looking fellow there. And then this other one that I did, I sold several of these. These are funny looking guys, but anyway, this fella, another polka dots with a white, you've seen those 2-color shirts where it's got one color on the body and then another color on the collar. And he's looking up like, okay, he's looking at the full moon or something, saying, "I hope this goes well. I hope this goes well. I hope this goes well." Anyway, all right. But we're gonna have a little bit of fun with this guy and what he's looking like. So I've got 2 or 3 of them here that I could paint, but I think I like this one right here better than the others, mainly because I've got more detail on this guy. Although he is kind of funky looking, I've got more detail on this guy than I've got on the others. And so we'll go with him and we'll have a fun time doing it. I'll hope to get this one done in less than about a half an hour, but we'll see how that goes. When I paint, I always like to put paper down. And I use this newsprint. I'm not sure if you can see that. I use this newsprint because it protects my carving surface and my painting surface, and that way I don't have a lot of spilled paint, splash, whatever on the background of my paper there. So I'm going to pull, pardon the sound, we'll just slip this right in here and do our best to keep everything on top of it and squared away. I haven't done a video in a couple months. I've missed doing a video because I like doing them. Oh, here's the other guys in it. This one's not quite finished. He needs some more finishing up around here, and I think that was a bad piece of wood because it kept splitting in several different places. So I don't want to burden you with that one. But I got these 2 guys. This one here's got a sweater and a goofy looking face. This one here has got a little slight off look to him. He's just looking a little bit to the left. So let's see if we can't keep that straight, everything that we're doing. Get out our brushes. We'll put the brushes right up here. And we got our water. We get our palette, and we'll be ready to go here in just a second. I always like to have napkins in 2 corners. So I put napkins down here in this far corner. I put napkins in that far corner. That way I'm never more than a few inches away if I have to clean up a little bit of spilled paint or a drip of water, whatever. That paper is not going to stay in place until I put some tape on it, so give me just a second and I'll tape it down. Fast forward past this 10 or 15 seconds we need to tape it down. That one there. And another piece over here on the edge. That'll keep that paper from moving around. I don't really want it to move around while I'm trying to show you all what I'm doing. I like this guy, but I think if he was going to wear a sweater, I would need to tool all of this, and I haven't tooled that, and so this guy is the one we're going to stick with. What I like to do first, and this isn't everybody, and this isn't always, but one of the things I like to do first is if there's any exposed skin, hands, face, ears, you name it, I like to paint that first because It is a two-step process for me. What I end up doing is I end up using this type of linseed oil, refined linseed oil, and I just put that on where the skin goes. And then what I'm going to do, in this case we've got skin on the face and skin on the hands. And then what I do is I come back with a regular flesh color, a warm beige flesh color like that one. And then I like to put an accent color over top of that one, and it's usually deep blush or shading flesh. And I'm saying colors that may not exist anymore, because Deco Americana loves to, about every 3 or 4 years, change what it's doing. And it changes the color of these things, and then it gets rid of something. I was trying to find a good black color, and the black color that I'm using now has a purplish tint to it, and it drives me nuts. But anyway, aside from that, we're getting sidetracked here. I wanted to get this done fairly quickly. So what I'm going to do, shake up that refined linseed oil, take the lid off. After you use it for a while, it gets to where it wants to stick on that lid. So what we're going to do, stay in the lane. I'm going to dip this in the linseed oil, and his hands are going to have it. You can see how that changes that color. It gives it more of a yellowish orange color. I'm just going to put that on where the hands are going. He's got one where one hand is covering the other. And if you miss a spot, it's not a big deal. This will do real well. I'm going to raise that camera up just a little bit. If y'all don't mind, bear with me a second or two. Back off just a little bit so you can see more of where I'm going. And that might work. Alright, see that color? Using refined linseed oil. I dip that in there for the face now, and I just want to splash it, spread it all over the face. I hear from people all the time that say, well, especially friends here where we live in the Boise area. And then people will come back after doing something for a while. They take a class with me, then they come back and then they want to take another class, and they've been doing their own thing for a while, which is what I encourage people to do. Then they'll come back and they'll say, well, you changed. And I'm going, well, what do you mean? They say, well, you don't use the same color scheme or the same process you used to do. And that may be right, but I like to look at that as an evolution. I don't necessarily have all the answers when I sit down, and I have an opportunity during the year to practice a little bit. I go to a class with someone that says use this or do that or dip it in that or whatever, and I'll try it. I mean, I'm willing to try just about anything, but he got a little black mark on his chin. I wanted to see if I could scratch that off without having to carve it off. Anyway, I take classes. I'm not arrogant enough to say that I don't need to take classes. I do. I just got back over the summer. I took a class from Rich Weatherby up at the Northwest Carbon Academy, and his way of doing faces is different than what I'm used to. And so I tried it his way a little bit of times, and I'm picking up a thing or two that says, I'll do part of this, but I may not do it all that way, because here's somebody that's been doing it for 50 years, and here I've been doing it for less than 20. So how they do what they do and how I do what I do, it is different. And there's nothing wrong with it being different. It just means you got to be comfortable with how you're doing it. I don't like to have anybody tell me exactly how I got to do things. I want people to say, this is how I do it, because that's what I do. I'm going to tell you, this is how I do it. You do whatever you want to, because it's your carving, it's your satisfaction, it's the way you want to do it. And I don't let anybody tell me I'm doing it quote-unquote wrong. Okay, I'm getting these two colors to match. What I want to do is I want to match the hue and the tint. So I'm going to go in here with a little bit of water. I don't take that out, dip it over here. It tones this one down, and then I go over to the other side without washing. And if you can't see that, what that is doing is pulling these colors together. The reason I want to do that is when I pull these colors together, that means when I put them on there, you don't see a lot of harsh lines because the colors kind of blend together. Now they would do that with colors that are very far apart in hue, but in this case what happens is I end up making the color look like it's seamless. So when it changes transition from one side of the face to the other, from under the nose to the ears, whatever, it looks a little bit like the colors are fading in together to where they fade. That's not a good word. They flow. I don't think that's the best word either. Anyway, I'm having a brain fart here today. The colors flow together and seem like they're transitioning from, you know, where you have light skin and dark skin. And if you look at your neighbor, look at yourself in the mirror, which really should be your best friend when you're painting, especially if you want to paint something like yourself. It's great when you do that and people love the way your colors flow. So I'm going to put this base color on everything that's hands. And right now I'm doing the face, and I'm sure I missed it. I got these electric lights, not electric lights, all lights are electric. I got these theater lights, stage lights up here, and I'm hoping that's enough color for what we're doing. Okay, now I'm going to wash out. Don't need to, but I'm going to because I want the color now to be a little more clear. And now I can tell that's a hard color, so I'm going to add a few more drops of water, probably about 7 or 8. And now I'm just going to hit some of these highlights because I want that color not to stand out too much. Hopefully you can see that with the color the way it's looking. Might be a little bright in here, I apologize for that. Might have to add some more lighting or something to balance it. But what I'm doing is I'm adding this color in places in the ear, underneath the chin, where I want that darker color to show up, and I want those lighter colors to show up on the highlights. And so I'm going to splash that all over there. I'm going to grab my hairdryer. You know what? I don't need to do the hairdryer because I'm going to go paint something else. In fact, I need to paint the hands. Sorry, I didn't paint those hands. Put a little more on the hands because the hands generally have a little more wear and tear on them. So when you go to paint hands, they'll have more color to them just because of the things we've gone through. The age spots that we have, the wrinkles, the things that we've done, the scars, whatever. It just has more tone to it. Okay, hopefully you can see that. Move those out of the way, it won't bother the background. You can see by the light how much some of this color is. Let me see what this does if I have it in light. Too much. Too much. Okay. Alright, you got to make some decisions here on what you're going to do as far as colors. And I want to keep this in really simple and really goofy. So I'm going to do shoes, some variation of brown. Do the shoes in some variation of brown. I'm going to choose a color here in just a minute. I don't really know where I want to go with this, but I want to just look at my paint palette. And I don't know about you, but I've got, well, I don't know, I can't even add. There's probably 150 paints up here on the top and another 150 on the bottom. At some point you go, dang, did I really buy that many paints? Oh, yeah, I did. And sometimes I bought them when I'm at the store thinking, oh, it's a pretty color. And I get home and find out I got 2 of them. And it'll take me about 5 years to use this color. And I got 2 of them, now 3. Oh well, they're $1 something, so they're not much. I mean, for some of you, it might be a little much, and you want to get by with something else. But it's not real expensive in the whole scheme of things. All right, I got a silver gray. This one was slate gray. I want his pants to be slate gray. That's where I went. And then I mixed up that color. I'm going to let it sit there for a few minutes. It's right here. I'm going to come back with a kind of a chocolatey brown, maybe a milk chocolate. This one says milk chocolate right there. Okay. So I'm going to throw a little bit of that right next to it. I usually over mix paints because I don't need but 5 strokes of the paint. But you hate to do it and then find out you got to do more, and you mixed it wrong. So now you got to try to match that mix. Not the easiest thing to do. If you've ever done it, you know what I'm saying. And these shoe colors, like leather, what I like to do is darken them down a little bit. So I do that color, which I think is a pretty color. And then I'm going to come back in here with a little bit of soft black. There we go. And I'm just going to get a dip in there. because I'm going to take the lid off. Go into that one that's in my paintbrush is in the water. Go in here and dip a little bit, maybe a little bit more, and then wash that off in there. Not sure if you can see the color differences, but it really gives it a different shadow. This is like, that first one was like brand new suede leather stuff. This is now worn out, darkened. If you've ever had suede or dark leather shoes, you know what they look like. All right, here we go. We're going to paint this guy's pants, and I'm not going to worry about pre-washing it, or what do they call it? I think what they do is treat it. I know a lot of people paint treat their paints before they paint it. They'll put a sealer on it of some sort. I don't do that very much. And not because it doesn't work for some people and I'm saying don't do it. I'm just saying for me, I've never got that one to work, because when I've pre-treated, when I've sealed it first, what I end up with is paint that sits on the top. If you know what I'm doing, you know what I'm talking about. Paint that sits on the top has a tendency to form its own coat. And I don't know, lack of a better word for that. But what ends up happening is it forms its own seal, and then that paint, when you drop it, like I'm prone to drop things a lot. See, as I get older, my hands don't work as well as I want them to. Or maybe it's just that I'm getting in a hurry. I've been impatient, I've been in a hurry, whatever. I found out that when I drop paint that's had that sealer put on it, what I end up with is a nick. And when I say a nick, I'm not talking about some guy standing over here whose name is Nick. I'm talking about the paint now has a chip taken out of it. Because I've sealed it and then I put paint over top of it, I have a tendency to see when I hit it or when I touch it or when I drop it, whatever, there's a little ding out of that paint gone. And what happens for me, and this is all my experience, I'm not talking about anybody else and how they do. I'm not here to talk about anybody else. I'm telling you how I do what I do. And when I do that, what I end up with is having to go back. I'm painting the belt loops back here. If I have to go back to paint over that nick in the paint, it's a lot of times I have already washed out that well and moved on. And now I have a really hard time trying to match that paint. Not that I can't, it's just extra time. And when you become someone who does shows or sells things or puts everything on Etsy, you want to streamline everything that you do. You do not want to spend 4 hours doing something that normally would already take you 2, because then that cuts into the time you have to do something. I gotta reach over here and get some kind of cutter. I got a sliver sticking out. I don't know if you can see that sliver right there in the middle. Right there. It's driving me nuts. Every time I paint, it just goes flop up and down. So I'm going to go up, I'm going to go down, and I'm going to sit there and fight with it. You don't want it to come off. I should, if I wasn't too lazy, I'd reach down there and grab a knife out of my box, which is over on the other side of the room for some reason. Anyway. There we go. Now we're going to paint back over that so we'll hide that cut mark that we made. Anyway, I'm trying to do everything so that I'm not having to waste a lot of time when I should be carving more things and giving me more time to do that. Now I'm going to come back into the same brush, that shoe color. I want to add more paint to it. I can always dip it over and make it a little bit more color value. So what I'm doing is I've watered that down, and so I'm now going to paint the shoes. I can always give it, okay, so what we're doing is a form of watercolor, because we've watered this stuff down, and now we want it to flow, and we don't want it to be, I don't know if you've ever played around with oil paints, but sometimes it's hard to get them to blend. So with this, what we're doing is trying to get the watercolor wash. If you've ever done any watercolor, you know, if you want darker paints, darker value, you give it multiple washes. And so I know some, not to mention any names, but I know some great carvers in the community that paint not with a lot of antiquing when they're done, which is one way of getting your paints to dull down a little bit, or to get them to flow together. A lot of folks will do it with colors. And so if I wanted the shoe to be a certain color here on the top, and I wanted it to be a different color on the bottom, I'd find a brown that's a little bit darker than this one that I'm using. And what happens is I'd paint that brown and leave it a little bit wet, and then go back in with a little darker brown on another brush. So I dip down to where I'm looking at the brush being one color in one brush and one color in another. And I want to do that. And while I'm here, let me show you what that looks like. I'll take a little bit of black here. I'll put that over in this well because I don't need much of this. Then I want to take some of this brown, and I don't know if you can see the difference in those two browns. That one looks a lot darker. Add more water to it so it'll flow. Not much, about 5 or 6 drops. Then I take a small brush like this one, a little detail brush. And what I want to do is right on the bottom of that shoe, you see how that flows? Put it right at the bottom of that shoe, and it gets darker down there at that bottom. So I go back in here and I dip again, wash it off a little bit, and I go back in there and I want a little more dark. Take a little more dark out of there, mix it well. My hand's moving so fast, it looks like I'm going to fast forward. Okay, take most of it off, because you can always add more. So I'm just dipping it off on the side. Come back here. Can you see that black coming to that color? Especially as it goes underneath the shoe. The edge of your shoes generally have a darker feel to them. And if you're worried about a harsh line, dip it into water and then wash that line to where they blend together. So now what we've got is we got a brown shoe, and it's a little bit darker around here, and I had a line right there that I was able to wash off. And so that's how the good ones, that's how what I consider the good ones do in terms of giving it more depth. The depth you're looking for is the lighter and darker colors. You go back to the old masters who mixed their own paints primarily, and that way they could control whatever effect they're looking for, adding light, taking light away. It's done with layers and layers and layers. And for those of you like me, I don't have all day to sit here and monkey around with it. I want to get in, get after it, get it done. So I'm going to use that rather than taking it and dunking it into a 5-gallon bucket of antique. To me, this is a more controlled ability. I can take that and I can make that shoe in some places be darker like I want. Okay, while I'm doing that, I'm trying to think of what kind of shirt he wants. I don't know if you can see that, but right here, let me dry that off. Right here, there's a piece of the wood that's got a dark part to it, so I would have to do something that's dark to cover that up. Gray pants, you'd go with a black shirt, maybe. You'd go with a white shirt, I don't know. But I'm thinking, I want to go with a white shirt and a gray on the cuff and a gray on the, just to complement the pants. And so I'm going to put that gray where I think I need to. It's going to first go on this first cuff right here. I just want to put one light coat there. I can always darken that if I need to, but I just want one light coat. And then I want to coat the collar as well. He doesn't have a tie. Maybe he didn't like the way the colors went. I don't know. This guy, he's just goofy. I mean, you know, it's like, you know, I don't know, I guess I'm kind of goofy too. My wife rolls her eyes at me all the time when I'm doing things, and she just looks at me like I've stepped off the planet Mars. Some of the things I do. Those of you who know my wife, you can just see her rolling her eyes at me. We'll fancy him up a little bit, and I'll show you what we'll do to fancy him up. I got some buttons, idea for buttons that we can play around with and see what that looks like. So far, with what little I've done, I think he's turning out okay. I apologize, my voice is real scratchy. I've been running like a crazy chicken with my head cut off lately, and it's just been non-stop. Since we last talked, I did 3 shows. We did okay at 2 of them, and we did not so okay at a 3rd one, but better than we did last year. And so we've got 2 more shows this year coming up. And if you know me, you know that I've retired as a teacher, but we ended up remodeling part of our kitchen, and so I want to pay that off as quickly as I can, the HELOC that we bought out on it. So we're trying to pay that off as quick as I can, and so I'm subbing a lot. And I get a chance to work with kids, and you know how much I enjoy working with kids. And so I get to go in and talk to kids and help them, whatever, and have a good time. And so lately I've been doing a lot of that. In fact, the whole month of October, I'm working about 17 days, something like that. Okay, that's a very dark black, and it might look okay when we get done. The good thing about acrylic paints, I can paint over it if it doesn't look good. I can always go back over it. I'm going to get a smaller brush because I got to get down in some of those small places. So we're going to wash that brush off while we look for another. This one right here might work. We'll see. Okay. I don't know about you, but I'm real particular about the brushes that I use. Some of them I find are real good round, and other ones I can't find a good round. And then another brand I'll find a good flat, shade or whatever, but everybody has their own opinion about. Oh, got a little mistake right there on his arm. Let's see if we can get it out of there. Yeah, maybe we took care of that. That's another thing. When you're a good painter, you know how to fix your mistakes. I don't qualify as a good painter because sometimes I don't fix the mistakes and make it worse. But working with acrylic, it's a very forgiving medium. Watercolor is really hard. I remember when I first started doing watercolor, I heard a quote by Winston Churchill, Premier of England during the World War II. And he would say, I look forward to eternity because that's about how long it'll take me to master watercoloring. I got a little bit of black down here. I want to wash it off. And I washed it off. It came out. So I got to be real careful how I'm doing this. It seems like I'm getting paint splashed over it. Anyway, he says it'll take me that long to master watercoloring. And I feel that I am in the same boat. I love watercolor. It's fun to do. I've done a lot of paintings. One of these days I'll show you some of the ones I got up on the wall. But I enjoy watercoloring itself simply because of the immediacy of what you're doing. You get it on there, and sometimes it's got to be right to start with. Otherwise, you've got a painting that'll last forever that you don't know what to do with because you don't like it. Anyway, this is just basically watercolors of some sort. And so what we're doing is taking the paints, wetting them down, watering them down to what we think is right. Be careful, your eyes will deceive you, because with acrylic, it dries darker. And so when you have a color on there, you got to make sure it's the color you want. Otherwise, You gotta wait till it's dry and paint over it. It's a little harder in watercolor. Alright, I'm just, I guess I'm doing what Chris Hammack says. I'm putting black where black goes and white where white goes, and I don't mean to be flip. I'm just that's what I'm doing. I made up a color scheme in my head and said this is what needs to go here, and proceeded to put that on there, and then okay. Go back over it. You paint it around in a certain schema. In other words, what you wanted to paint first, what you wanted to paint second. Got a little tuck down in there, and mist down in the wrinkle. I don't know about you, but sometimes I have a hard time talking, painting, and staying within the lines. I've never been good at staying in the lines, and always have to double check myself. I'm going to be lazy and not grab another color. What I want to do is paint that belt. I just want a little tiny brush in here. This will work perfectly for that. It's a little kind of worn out brush, but I want to paint the belt same color. So I go back in here. There you go. I talked about staying in the lines, and then I promptly got out of them. Sorry, folks. I'm learning. Slowly. Missed a little spot right there of gray. So I gotta go back up here and touch it. Okay. And I missed a spot right down there of black. So I'm gonna go back in here and I want to touch that one. Okay. This guy's pretty near. Oh, I got some more gray I missed here. There's some right there. And then a little more gray right there. Okay. Now this guy is almost completely painted. I got to do his hair and finish his face. I got more. See, I splashed paint up on his face. Good thing about acrylic is maybe I can take my finger and wash it, and if not, I can take a stiff brush and wash it off. And maybe if I leave it there, he might have a pimple. You know how it is when you first date and you got a pimple. That doesn't go over well. Alright, I've got a couple more things I need to do and he might be done. I'm going to get crazy, as Bob Ross says. And on his black shirt, we're going to do some silver, like button-up pearl snaps. And all I'm going to do, shake this stuff up, because this metallic paint doesn't like doing what I want it to do sometimes. Uh-oh, paint in the way. It'll get on something if I don't get it off. Okay, I'm going to dip right out of the lid. It's called Gunmetal Gray. And it may be shiny enough to give me what I want. It may not, but let's see what it does. Little tiny brush, because I got real little bitty buttons on there. You can see the buttons right there, there, and there. And I'm just going to dip. This is still wet, but if I do it thick enough, I think it'll look okay. You can't hardly see that, so I'm going to give that a couple minutes to dry, and we'll go back over it with another, maybe we won't. I don't look like I've got another gray up here, but we might have to hit it with a little bit of white in there so make it match up. Alright, haven't figured out what color hair he wants, but he looks like Well, I don't know. We could be lazy and use the paint we already have, but this paint is so cheap, it's not a big deal. What I'm going to do, I'm going to color down his hair. I'm going to take a little bit of this paint, move it over to another well, bring in some more water, and about 8 drops. And all I'm going to do is get a watered down version of his shoes, which means we're tying colors in. So this one here is about that light, and the shoe color is about that light. Now maybe you can see the difference in the darkness of the two paints. I'm going to come back here. I don't need a big brush, so I'm going to use a small one. And I'm going to start right at the top. And this is a very watered down paint. So I just want to water it down. I keep knocking the camera aside, sorry folks. And I'm just going to come here and just color his hair. It's really light colored, it blends in with that flesh. And it doesn't matter whether you got it darker in one place or lighter in another. This is the kind of thing where hair takes on so many different values because of the light reflecting off of it, because of the way it was combed, because of the last thing you did to it in terms of coloring or shampoo or whatever. Hair just takes on a color all its own, and if it's wet enough, it'll flow down into those grooves that you really don't have to go over there and hit them. They're going to flow that way. And then we're going to put another color on and finish it with a third. The third one's going to be more like a highlight color, because we've got brown in here. We're going to water something down to go down into the cracks and crevices. And then we're going to come back with a highlight across the top of the carvings. Because the way you do hair, to make it look like real hair, it ends up leaving you some spaces in between there where you've V-tooled or gouged or knife cut, whatever. And you can use that particular cut to get highlights and shadows in the hair. Okay. I didn't scratch out room up here for eyebrows here and here. I didn't care. It's not that important because we don't want the eyebrows to overcome the carving. So what I'm going to do now, while this is still wet, I'm going to take a little bit of this watered down brown that we got, and I'm just going to put that up here. And I want to water a little black in there too. And then I'm going to water that down so that it flows. And I don't need much. What we're going to do is we're just going to touch it in there. See how that flows? We don't have to try to make every stroke happen. Let the carving do what it can for you. And if you think that's too much, go back over it and take out that excess paint. And it'll get rid of that. You don't have to worry about too much paint, not enough paint. So get across the top, on the sides here. Make sure you don't miss the sideburns. They're important. First date, he wants to make sure his too much ran everywhere. I don't know what it is about this brush. This is a number 6 round. Man, it holds a lot of paint in there. You got to be careful when you're using it, because it'll overcome everything else. All right. Again, let's put a little more dark highlights toward the front. That particular little bit ran away off his head. It's alright. We can wash it off. Just like that. Okay, now it's still very wet. I've run over it twice with water. What I want to do is take a little bit of light buttermilk. Those of you that know how I paint, you know I like light buttermilk quite a bit. It makes a good highlight color. What I want is a really dry, stiff brush, and I usually use either something like this where it's a bristle brush like this, or I use a little makeup brush like this one here. My makeup brushes I've got this big one, I don't have a smaller one because I've used it up. So I'm going to go back to that other one that I saw right here. This little stiff bristle brush. Okay, I'm going to just dip into that buttermilk, and then I want to take about 80% of it off, maybe 90, I don't know. But I'm just going to rub it in here because I want to grind it into those bristles, and then I want to take that much off. And then I'm going to run over across the hair. I'm going to bring it across. So if the cut's going this way, I want to do it like that. Maybe you can see how that's showing up a little bit. This is the highlight. Feel free to use a much lighter brown or a much lighter black. Not really a lighter black. Black is black or it's black, right? All I'm doing is I want to come across that head, front, top, sideburns, and just give it a little bit of highlight. Just so he looks like he's put on enough gel to hold his hair together no matter what happens. I was asked just recently if I was going to do a female companion to this. The answer is yes. I'm drawing it out right now. Women are hard to carve and paint, but I've seen a few examples that I can use as inspiration to do that. I talked about highlighting these buttons. Let's see what it looks like when I highlight with just a little bit of this buttermilk that nobody will know is there. A little bit on the tip of the brush, just a little bit of that on that edge. You see it. And I'm going to say, what does it look like right here on that button? Might not be the look I'm looking for, but it goes well. It looks good. Alright, the hardest part of the carving that everybody hates are eyes. So here's what we're going to do. So we said we're going to paint eyes, and what we've got is we've got this guy left to do. There's not much of him left. I've carved the eyes so that he looks like he's looking over here. His eyes look like they're pointed this way, and so if we paint that, then I think we should get the results we're looking for. I think pretty right now, except for the base. I haven't painted the base. I think he's looking okay. I still haven't highlighted him, but I think it's going to work out one way or the other. Let's take a couple minutes and we'll paint his eyes. Okay, we're going to use these two colors on his eyes. We've got white for the background, warm white, and we've got traditional brown, burnt umber. These are going to be the highlight and the shadows. And then we're going to use I lost that color. We're just going to use that traditional brown, burnt umber, and then add a little highlight to it. And I use these full strength. So I'm going to mix them up because I want them to be up at the top. Because I'm going to pull that lid off, and that paint in there, there's no paint in there, this thing must be just about out. Come on, work with me. I can hear it sloshing, but I can't when I get to the opening. Okay, now you can see it. There's paint in there, and there's paint in there. So I'm going to use a tiny little brush, and we've struggled for years on what to use. These are makeup brushes. You buy them from Amazon for, I don't know, there's 100 of them in there for $8. But that little bitty pointed tip, you can see it. That thing will do the ticket for you. So I'm going to do the white, and I want to lay the white down first. So I got my white right up here. I don't need a lot, and if you need cheaters, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm getting to the point where I probably need them soon, but I'm going to just get that white down in there and cover that inside of the eye. Got a little dot on the middle, or in the inside. I want to color that over towards this bottom. So he looks like he's looking this way, so I've got to make this part of the eye bigger than the inside. So make sure you painted it all, both eyes. And that's what we wanted. We wanted white in those eyes. It's not showing up very well. Hold still. White in both eyes. Okay, ordinarily I'd hit with a hairdryer, but I think this will work. And so now what I want to do is I want to take that eye, be something to write with here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. When I paint eyes, what I want is, in this case, I've got basically a triangle like this right here. I want to color it white so it looks like that, and then I want to come in with black right here, not black, the traditional burnt umber, and I want to provide a light shadow there, so that when I go to do the eye, I'm going to leave a little bit hanging here, and I'm going to have a little dot right up there for color. So if you imagine the color's reversed, this would be dark, and that would be a light. I'll show you what that looks like. But I did the white, and so now I want to do the traditional burnt umber, and I'm going to start in the corner, get a little bit of paint on there, and start right in that corner. I'm going to start from the lowest part, go to the upper part. So you can see me right there. I want to go from that outside to the tip, and I want to bring it down to the outside of the eye. Basically what I'm doing, and I wiped most of it off wrong, what I'm doing is going, that's the upper eyelid, it's got a little bit of a shadow to it. I don't want to leave that shadow there. Generally I don't do it to the bottom either. Gotta be real careful because it doesn't take much to be alpha on that one. I forgot to do the inside of this one here, so I'm going to do it here as well. So that's my shadow on both eyes. And then I'm going to take a little bit of the, where'd the black go? Take a little bit of the black, and I know on a bigger carving I would have the pupil and the iris and all that. I'm not going to worry about that too much today, mainly because it's such a small face, and with small faces you can get by with fewer details. In fact, that's really what you want to do. You don't want to put every detail on a 1-inch face, because that just overwhelms what you're trying to do. So I'm shaking out the black. Now I want to put an eyeball in there. So I'm going to be careful to make sure that it's in the right spot. I want to leave a little bit of white on the inside, but otherwise the good thing about this is if you screw it up, you can always paint it over. You get it bad enough, you can take some thick white paint and you can paint over it. Don't stress about that. You're going to find your perfect eye after doing, I don't know, 1,000 of them or whatever. But all the time, look at how you're improving. And so I've got 2 eyes painted. And I'm going to take that white and I'm going to give it a dot. I just want a little dot right there. Oh, that didn't do a thing. I don't need much. And like I said, if you make too big of a black part, paint white in the corners again. Anyway, alright. Other than the base, whatever color you want to do the base, I'd probably take some of this black and just slobber it all over the place and not worry about it. This is not going to be, and make sure you sign your carvings, always. I like to sign them. You don't necessarily have to put on the date. I've heard some carvers say if you put the date on it, people will only buy the newer stuff. I've heard other people say that if you sorry, I got my paints mixed up. If you number them, then the IRS is going to come after you. That if you put on number 100 for $50, they're going to say, "Where's the other 99 for $50 each? You owe us taxes." I don't know whether that's true. I know the IRS and the state tax departments are so overwhelmed that they're probably not chasing many of us for a few dollars. Having said that, when we do shows, there's a specific way you have to report your earnings on there, and I know in Idaho everybody has a personal account if you've ever filed for taxes on your own income, and then if you've got a business, you got a business account, and I made the mistake of reporting some of my show earnings on my personal account, and so I sent the payment in on my business account, and they were freaking out like, "Well, this isn't supposed to be over here. You got to blah 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 blah." And I'm still dealing with that. But anyway, I don't think it matters if you sign it. I know in the future your kids may want, I mean, none of us, very few of us are going to go famous, but your kids may want to gather some of your carvings, your grandkids, others like that who are interested in what you're doing. They may want to find some of those, and it's easier to find them if they have names on them, obviously. I think I'm going to call this one done. Paint the bottom, the bottom base, whatever you want. Let me go back. That buttermilk that I talked about, that's what I highlight with. So just like I did with the hair, I'm going to do the same thing with the clothes. So I'm going to take as much of that paint off as I can. And what I want to do is I want to just lightly give it some kind of highlight. Just some kind. It'll show up on the darker colors more than on the lighter ones, but when you see it in person, you can see it. That little bit of paint that we put on the brush goes a long way, so be careful. See how it brings out the wrinkles and the facets of the shirt. You've already done his hair. You don't need to go back and do it again. Some people like to put a dot of resin or can't remember what that stuff is called. But anyway, you get a little bottle of glaze. Let's see if it was right there. There it is. Triple thick brilliant brush on glaze, and so that in the eyes makes them shiny, and it brings out another facet to it as well. I'm going to call this one good here, and I think we're done with this guy. Look for the female companion whenever I come out with her, and we'll see if we can't make her look just as companionable to him as she wants to look. So I appreciate y'all following me along. I appreciate you staying with me. Appreciate your patience, and I look forward to a long relationship with you and a lot more carving videos as we go along. Y'all have a great day. God bless. Take care. See you on the next video.